Take a little time away from the madness tonight on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time for our weekly live call-in show. Not the only time we do it each week, but definitely the one that we deliver each and every week. Again, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, we're here on a Wednesday night to take your calls on college football. I typically have a topic lined up to kind of guide the conversation, but you know what the deal is. Ultimately, you produce the show. You produce the show with your comments in the live chat that I will get to, and of course, your calls to hear the voice of college football. All right. Much appreciate that. Check out the ticker below. Shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section. You know what the deal is right there. You would help build the channel tremendously if you would get into the habit of please shopping Amazon using the link in the description section that we provide. Couple notes from college football today. Lincoln Riley and Gary Patterson are in discussions right now involving one quarterback, Chandler Morris. Now, Chandler Morris has been a backup at Oklahoma for a couple of years. He is deciding to transfer to TCU, and he, of course, would like to play this fall. Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma are dead set against immediate transfers being eligible within the conference. They, of course, benefited a few years ago from Baker Mayfield leaving Texas Tech and being immediately eligible to play quarterback at Oklahoma. But Lincoln Riley has stated that Chandler Morris did a great job at Oklahoma, did all the great things that we required for him to do, is a tremendous person, but we are just against the thought process or against just the allowance of transfers to go in conference and be immediately eligible. That, of course, would persuade any player to transfer out of conference. So Lincoln Riley says that he and Gary Patterson are currently discussing. It will be interesting to see who wins that war, because I don't know that Lincoln Riley cares that much about Chandler Morris suiting up against his Oklahoma team. I think he's more concerned about the long-range impact and trying to stand his ground this time to set a precedent. But if he gives in or this is allowed, then obviously the tables have turned, and this is going to be a precedent that's set on the other side in which the Big 12 would allow immediate transfers to be eligible within the conference. All right. Also, big news out of Athens, Georgia. Number one, Georgia wide receiver George Pickens tore his ACL. So this is late March. And even with the progress that they've made in the medical field concerning these surgeries that used to knock out a player for sure for an entire year, if not longer, a lot of these players are getting back much sooner than that. Amari Rodgers, a recent example, the Clemson wide receiver, coming back in 6 to 8 months. But generally, it's more like an 8 to 10 month recovery and rehab to get back on the field, which would take us to the end of the season in 2021. So George Pickens' season is most likely over. We talked about it with Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports. So check out that video. He had a lot of great insight. He believes basically Pickens is going to rehab for entry into the NFL draft in 2022. And that seems to make a whole lot of sense. So Georgia's loaded at wide receiver with talent, but in regards to experienced production, Kyrus Jackson comes back with 36 catches. You've got also Burton comes back. Jermaine Burton with 27 receptions from last year. George Pickens, though, by far the most productive and explosive wide receiver on the team over the past 2 years, caught 49 2 years ago. And his chemistry with JT Daniels was obvious. George Pickens only had 13 catches before JT Daniels stepped into the lineup for the final 4 games. And then he caught 23 and caught all of his passes from JT Daniels, all of his touchdown receptions from JT Daniels, excluding 1. All right. The phone number is 860-499-3332. I better get that to the screen. My apologies there. and I'll go through the live chat as well, as we've got a call coming in right here. But once again, let me make sure we've got the number posted bottom line on the ticker. So I took away the Amazon reminder, but don't forget, shop Amazon. Use the link in the description section of any of the videos. There's your number, 860-499-3332. Let's talk it up with Dominic, who wants to talk some football. I think Dominic would most likely want to talk some basketball. Actually, we've got the first callers in here from Alabama. Who's on the line here? Oh, it's Hunter. Hunter, I got to apologize to you and a whole lot of people that call in now that we've got the voice recognition, because it hardly ever picks up the correct message. So I did not get Hunter out of that. I got Alabama, and that's about it. So that's all I heard there. Hunter, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
My question for you today is, do you think this is a season where Jim Harbaugh makes Michigan again?
No, I don't. And I don't think that for a number of reasons. And so when you say Michigan again, are you thinking about, let's say, winning a Big Ten championship?
I'm thinking about just being competitive again. Not even Big Ten championship. I mean, if he gets them to where they're even competitive, it's going to be at least 2 more seasons before I think he can get there. But just to be competitive again and at least putting up some sort of a fight against Ohio State and some of the other teams within that conference.
So, Hunter, I get your point, but the place where I'll push back a bit is that, they've been blown out by Ohio State 2 consecutive years. Yes, no doubt. They've not been competitive against Ohio State, but they've been competitive overall. Jim Harbaugh's got a nice record. Basically, he's gone 10-2 or 9-3 every year that he's been there up until last year. So it's just been the one down season, and that was only a 6-game season. So they were competitive. If you're talking about finishing in the top 15 in America, they've been competitive, but competitive against Ohio State. That's pretty much what I'm saying when I say win a Big Ten championship. They have to get through Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it just seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it just seems to me that Michigan fans seem to characterize their success of the season on how many games they win and if they beat Ohio State. And just in being like when they played Alabama, for instance, that game wasn't even competitive at all. It just wasn't. There was no really good. It wasn't a good game where you're having a nail biter. And I would just like to see them be good because they've been historically been a good program, and I'd like to see them rise back to where they should be.
Well, Hunter, I would say that there's no question that game. So Hunter's referring to the bowl game 2 years ago after the 2019 season. Alabama won that game 35-16. They did score a touchdown with about 30 seconds left. So it was 28-16 with about a minute left in the game. So I will say that, you're right. The game was not down to the wire by any stretch. It was decided sometime in the fourth quarter, but it did become a close to fourth quarter game. Michigan did have a lead in that game in the third quarter.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, we've talked about games where you've seen games where the score has been close, relatively close, but you could just tell that the other team was clearly more dominant and better. That's what I mean by dominant, I guess.
No, I hear you. I watched the game, and Alabama was clearly better, but I do think that for a half, Michigan played right with them, and then into the third quarter, and Alabama did not blow them out in any such way. It was pretty much just a slow burn toward the finish line. And again, it was 28-16, which is a pretty competitive game. But I get your point. I don't want to lock in on just one game. But since you brought up the Alabama game from 2019. So for me, basically, Jim Harbaugh took over Michigan. He improved the program, improved the recruiting, developed the talent that he was given, actually overachieved the first 2 years, and then he flatlined, and his best team was in 2018. They went 10-1 to start the season, then got blown out by Ohio State, and it's been pretty much downhill since then, although 2019, again, they were 9-3 and played Alabama. See, I would say competitively, but I'm getting your point. No, Michigan's not going to be, I don't believe, competitive with Ohio State to win the Big Ten championship this year. No.
Well, if J.J. McCarthy is their quarterback, coming into this year, they picked up some talent along the wide receiver position. I just don't think that their offensive coordinator should be an offensive coordinator. I mean, he was an Alabama coach at one point, and he never really had experience, being a coordinator. So I don't know what in Jim Harbaugh's mind was thinking to make him the offensive coordinator when he has no previous experience being a coordinator.
Hunter, they have 6 new coaches on this staff, and only only one of them has coached that position before. The other 5 have never coached that position in college before. So they're asking 5 coaches to coach a position that they've never coached at the collegiate level before. And 3 or 4 out of those 5 just arrived on campus days before spring camp started. One of them was hired the day that spring practice started. So, they're asking a lot of their coaching staff. And that's one of the reasons why, I don't know if this sounds ridiculous, but I was asked by our guy Steve Dace on Michigan Podcast when he had me on what I would do during spring practice. And this is long gone, way too late to fix now. But I would think that those coaches would need some advice, some mentoring, I would bring on some, a Bob Stoops kind of guy to come just walk around the practice field and observe the coaching, because Jim Harbaugh is going to have to evaluate how well his coaching staff is doing this spring, in addition to evaluating the players, just to see how well they're gelling and coaching different positions that they've never coached before.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think you made a good point there when talking about the inexperience of the coaches. Because if we look at the last few recruiting classes, they've recruited pretty well. They just haven't been able to produce a product. Now, I don't know if that has to do with the coaching, the actual coaching, or if that has to do with the culture of the program. And what I mean by that is, do they have a culture of winning? Do they have the morale, the structure, kind of like Nick Saban, refers to the process? If Jim Harbaugh has any of that going for him in that program, and I don't think he does, to be honest with you.
Jim Harbaugh is a personality who is able to use his football knowledge and his personality and his magnetism to draw recruits and to get players to play pretty well for him. And he's done that in his previous stops. I just think he's run into a situation at Ohio State where they're just doing things at a much higher level, and he's not been able to crack the code or figure it out. And I think he's I don't like to get in the minds of people and try to state their level of emotion, but I would think that he's frustrated by now.
Yeah, I do too, and I just don't know if they have the right culture of going on right now in Ann Arbor. But I would like to see them do well, just like I would love to see Nebraska do well. I would like for these historic programs to be you know what their brand is, and they're right now teams like Nebraska and Michigan are better, are not that way right now. I think Nebraska has a good chance of being good in the next few years. But I'm just baffled at Jim Harbaugh's lack of ability to be good at Michigan.
Well, again, it's all on how you define being good, because they've been a top 15 team in the country for the years that he's been there prior to last year. And so they were generally awful or mediocre. They were awful under Rich Rod. They were mediocre under Brady Hoke. Now, Jim Harbaugh has not been performing at the degree that Lloyd Carr did. Lloyd Carr, if you go back, sometimes Jim Harbaugh's record gets compared to Lloyd Carr, but I've looked at it, and Lloyd Carr won more frequently than Jim Harbaugh, and won something like 5 Big Ten championships in the time that he was there, and of course won a national championship. So Jim Harbaugh's not meeting the expectations of being paid as one of the top 2 to 3 coaches in the country prior to this year coming up. But of course they've modified that, and now he's only being paid whatever the figure is. He's been downgraded tremendously, and he's going to be paid an incentive laden contract. So he's got at least that motivation to win big.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking my call, and always good to hear your input on things.
Appreciate that, Hunter. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, now we got Dominic on the line here. Hopefully Dominic is here with us. Dominic, you on the line? Hello, Dominic. Uh-oh. Dominic, one more time. Huh. Unfortunately, we cannot connect with Dominic. Don't know what's going on there. It's showing me that the call's connected. So we will have to move on to Kevin from Dallas. All right. Always like hearing from Kevin. Kevin, how you doing tonight? Uh-oh. Did we have some kind of disconnect? This is 2 straight calls. Did we have some kind of issue? Kevin, can you hear me? This looks like it might have disconnected. Let's give this another shot here. We've got more calls coming in here. Let's try this one. Hello, 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 hello. You're on with the Voice of College Football. Why is it showing me that it's connected there? Let's try it again. Stand by, folks. Appreciate the super chat.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show number and press pound.
So let's go right back through it.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host.
All right, folks.
You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Who's next up? So if everybody who attempted previously to call in, give it another shot. There we go. Hello, it's Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate.
Hey, Nate, what's going on?
Not much, man. Just one. I think that previous caller got all my questions.
Uh-oh. No, I know you better than that,
right.
Nate. You've got more.
No, I got some questions though. I just those are my main questions. I got some substitutes. So my questions are like if Michigan has like 9 wins, doing like a prediction wise, but if they have 9 wins right now and 2 losses, and the last game, I forgot how many games they have, probably 11, right? I don't know. So they're 9-2, my prediction, and they go to the big house and versus Columbus, Ohio State. If they do win that game, would that be like a New Year's Six bowl for them, even though Ohio State like lost one?
So basically, you're setting it up for Michigan to be 9-2, and then to play Ohio State, which I believe that the game's at the Big House this year, and win the game against Ohio State, pull off the upset, be 10-2. So Nate, just understand that anytime you bring that kind of scenario to the table, that I generally need to know what else is going on around the country. But I think it's pretty safe to say that if Michigan goes 10-2, they'll be in a New Year's Six bowl game, just like they were in 2016 and 2018.
That's one question. My second question is, do you think Scott Frost is on the hot seat right now? Or hopefully.
I think that basically, regardless of what happens with Nebraska football this year, aside from some just disastrous season where they go 2-10, but even if they don't have a good season, let's say they go 5-7, I don't think that Scott Frost would be fired after going 5-7. I think that they would extend him one more year, and then 2022 would be the hot seat year for Scott Frost. I might be wrong.
Okay.
I've been wrong in the past at times, but I think that he's going to get, because he's recruiting well, he's bringing in really good recruiting classes, and I think that they're dismissing last season because of the pandemic, that I believe that he's going to get a bit of a, not a pass, but another year to fully get he's pretty much at this point filled the roster with his players that he's signed. So he really has no excuses going forward.
Yeah. I have another question too. I think I asked this before, but I don't know if I did. Do you have any coaches in mind if Harbaugh this is his last year? If this is his last year, if he gets fired, for example, what top 3 coaches do you think is suitable for Michigan?
Well, I've got to say that I'm not aware of any NFL coordinators, offensive or defensive coordinators, that are at the top of their game, meaning that we see a lot of head coaching vacancies filled at the collegiate level by especially offensive coordinators at the NFL level, and I don't really keep up with that to know who those guys would be that are hot commodities right now at the NFL level.
Well, I'm not trying to ask for an NFL coach. I was asking like collegiate, like for example, like Matt Campbell.
Sure.
Would he be? Yeah. Okay.
Well, as soon as you asked the question, Nate, I got to tell you that Matt Campbell was the first name that went through my mind.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to believe that he may not leave Iowa State for a Michigan job, that he's built up Iowa State so well to the point where he may not even want to mess around with Michigan. I don't know. But he would be my number one candidate if I was Michigan. I know. I would think that, let's see who else is out there. in terms of, usually you're looking at the group of 5 level to see who would be the next high riser there, and Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. But of course, his ties to Ohio State, I don't know if he would take that job. He turned down Michigan State.
Yeah. To be honest, it's pretty tough to think about it too, because I don't know who else is in who else is the top candidates for Michigan. Yeah, it's tough for a Michigan fan to think about it. But I have no candidates in my mind. Well, except for Matt Campbell, but that's about it. But maybe probably this is tough to think about, but that's all I have, Mark. I just want to ask you those questions. So have a good night, sir.
You too, Nate. Have a good one. Appreciate the call. Yep. All right. Now we can get Kevin in here from Dallas. Kevin, how are we doing tonight?
Great. How you doing this evening, Mark?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Just needed to piggyback Hunter real quick, and since Hunter is I'm just going to assume an Alabama fan, just wanted to just remind him of a few things in reference to Josh Gattis. Mark, I don't know if you were trying to be nice by not telling him the reason why Josh Gattis is the offensive coordinator at the University of Michigan, and it's only one reason, and that is, the word begins with the letter R and begins with the letter G, M with the letter G. He is a blanketed blank recruiter, and that's the reason why. So, and that's, part of it, case in point, that was the reason why he didn't stay on with the University of Alabama. Harbaugh offered him a little bit more money as well as the OC job. He wasn't going to have the opportunity as far as to be the OC at University of Alabama in the foreseeable future. By that being the case, he jumped on the first thing running, heading to Ann Arbor. But one question I have for you, Mark, in reference to the University of Michigan, would it be safe to say that when the time comes that, as the old song says, when it's time for the University of Michigan and Harbaugh to let's just kiss and say goodbye, that they should get out of the notion of having a Michigan man as the coach?
Oh, absolutely, they should.
Outgrown that.
Oh, okay. They better not restrict themselves just to hiring a Michigan man. Then they've limited the field immensely. I don't even know who they'd go after. Of course, Les Miles has worn out his welcome across America, so he wouldn't be the guy, as he was the number one choice candidate. Let's see, that would have been in 2007. Oh, absolutely. They need to get way past that thinking. Nick Saban's not an Alabama man. Dabo Swinney's not a Clemson man. Ryan Day's not, and we could go on down the line. It's just, you're just hamstringing yourself to it. It's a bonus. It could be a bonus just in regards to that individual understanding the traditions and the legacy and all that. But shoot, that's not important.
Well, when it comes to that, Mark, sometimes you can just acquire that by, for lack of a better way to say it, osmosis. Because you look at it, case in point, you brought up Alabama. When Alabama went through, quote, those that had that Alabama lineage, that Alabama history, and of the coaches that they've had in, whether it's a former player or a former coach, there's only one that won a title, and that was Gene Stallings. Now, as far as Ray Perkins, he was I guess, middle of the road as far as a college coach. And you might even say for some, a middle of the road as far as a pro coach. And then when it comes to Mike Shula, former player, but the only thing that you can really say when it's all said, I'm still going to say middle of the road, though.
Well, yeah,
I wouldn't say, but not as far
exactly.
as a title.
I'm putting him in that bucket with the other two.
And then as far as Shula was concerned, wouldn't it be safe to say, other than being a former player, that by your dad's first name being Don, that had a lot to do with him being the Alabama coach?
Well, I certainly don't know what he did, and I'm not disparaging him as a coach. I think he was capable, but I don't know what he ever did to earn the Cincinnati Bengals head coaching position either. So you would think that had something to do with it. Yeah.
And going back for a moment as far as the Oklahoma TCU, I'll just use the term situation and how it benefited Oklahoma as far as Blake, and then how it could possibly, Baker, how it benefited as far as Baker and how it could possibly benefit TCU as far as Chandler. Question, because I'm the only conference that I'm aware of as far as having the interconference transfers is the SEC. Is it something in black and white, Mark, that the Big 8/Big 12 cannot do that? Or is it more so him digging his heels in the sand saying, I don't want it, so it's because it's not benefiting the University of Oklahoma?
Yeah, I just saw that story as I was setting up, so I wasn't able to read all the way through. I just skimmed through it. I don't know exactly if there is a rule. I would think that there is a allowance for Lincoln Riley or somebody from any administration or football program to put the halt on that. Otherwise, that's what's going on right now. So it must be a rule. I'll verify that, but it must be again that the school in which the player is leaving, they have to give clearance for that player to be eligible in conference. So Lincoln Riley's not allowing that.
Because when you all were, speaking about it, and then also when I heard about it earlier, the first thing that came to mind was two situations that dealt with the University of Alabama, one with Tennessee and one with Georgia. And, both of those are, as far as Tennessee being as far as in the same, the same part of the East-West setup as far as Alabama, then as far as Alabama, Georgia. As far as Alabama, the year that I think that I'm trying to think, it was, I think the year that they beat Georgia in the not SEC, but the national championship. And they had a guy to transfer. He was a fifth year, so he was a grad transfer, and he transferred from Alabama to Georgia. And Saban gave him a little bit of he had umbrance as far as that was concerned, and didn't want him to do it, but he transferred. And he cited as far as something in reference to his mother. But then on the other hand, when you look at going back, and your as far as dates are better than mine, Mark, in regards to the Alabama backfield that had, Derrick Henry, Kenyon Drake, and this guy who felt that he was the third on the totem pole, and he transferred to the University of Tennessee, and that was Alvin Kamara. Mm-hmm. But I don't hear that much a fuss that was kicked up in reference to Alvin Kamara, But he was able to do it, and the only thing that got in the way was that, hey, Butch Jones didn't utilize him. And then as far as I know, Georgia had a young man as far as the defensive end that transferred from UGA to the University of Florida. And I think was Brenton Cox. He was like a defensive end. He started this past year. I don't know whether he was a junior last year or it may have been his last year at Florida.
Yep.
But those would have been two Eastern Conference schools. So.
You also have Nick Marshall, who was the Auburn quarterback. He had transferred from Georgia. He was a defensive back when he first was recruited and signed at Georgia, and he left to go to Auburn. And led them to a national championship
Mark,
game. Yep.
I'm trying to figure, is this supposed to be just a matter of it? I mean, why is this coming up now in some cases?
That's a great question. And I'm getting through this article, and I'm just going back through those situations that you just mentioned and others. And this is what I believe to be the case, is that there has always been in college football a transfer rule that the player in question is not eligible once they transfer. Okay. So that's just the rule number one, that if you transfer from one school to another, you're not eligible. But then what's happened in recent years is, so we would see this all the time. And this is one of the reasons why we rarely saw players transfer years ago, because they would have to sit out a year. But in recent years, there has been a rule put in place, and maybe it existed all along, that if you could prove some kind of a hardship or some kind of reason why you were transferring, then you would be immediately eligible. And so a player would say that, they had a family situation, they needed to be closer to home or whatever the situation. Well, it seems in recent years, Kevin, as though anything and everything has been considered a hardship, that the player could just say, I just wasn't comfortable in that locker room or whatever, and it would be approved and fine. And so now we see players transferring all over the place and being eligible the very next season. It's pretty apparent from this article, even though it's not clearly stated, and I'm sorry, it should be in this ESPN article. The only two indications it gives, it says in the very first sentence, Lincoln Riley confirmed Wednesday that Oklahoma has not released quarterback Chandler Morris. So again, even though any student has the right and the freedom to transfer if they'd like, to allow them to play football, the previous school has to release them. And then Gary Patterson backed that up when he told reporters that and this particular player, Chandler Morris, is playing. He's in spring practice playing. But in terms of being eligible to play in a game, Gary Patterson notes he still hasn't been released by Oklahoma. And then Lincoln Riley makes kind of a vague statement here in where I'm trying to get some clarification on exactly where this stands, because he says it's a fluid situation right now. Our plan is just to let this play. He doesn't say to let the player play, but to let this play, let some of these rules solidify. What I don't know what that means, and we'll be open to watching it and seeing how it unfolds. It sounds like, well, if there's a rule, there's a rule. And if he has control over this situation because of needing to release that player, I don't know what he's talking about. He's being very vague, like it's out of his hands. And to see these rules solidify, well, these rules they're rules. They don't need to solidify. I don't really understand that statement.
Well, Mark, odd. I think it's similar to what the SEC believes. And I think it may be a gentleman's agreement, as in, that we're not going to allow, as far as your guys to transfer to us or we to transfer to you all, because that's going to open up Pandora's box. And it makes me think of two things. One of you, I don't know, the guest or caller that brought up the Justin Fields situation, and that's, we'll talk about yesterday briefly, then as far as today, as in Henry Toto. And I apologize if I butchered his name. But in reference to Justin Fields, initially he was a hard verbal as far as Penn State. And it was more of a family decision for him to go to the University of Georgia. So I don't know whether his sister has finished as far as playing fastball at Georgia or not, but it was a matter of dad didn't want to have to do the Happy Valley plus the Athens round trip, because, hey, he's supportive as far as his kids, as far as their athletic as well as in academic endeavors. But then the kicker, as far as why they stated that his run, for lack of a better way to say it, was so less at the University of Georgia that year, was because he couldn't read the playbook. Now, my question to you, Mark, is the playbook is it smaller at Ohio State than it is at Georgia? Are we looking at War and Peace as far as Georgia, and let's see Cliff Notes as far as Ohio State? I mean, help me with that. So, because that's the thing that just kind of blew me away as far as saying that he couldn't read the playbook.
Well, going by the sophistication of Ryan Day's passing offense versus Kirby Smart's, you'd think, if anything, he's stepping into a more complicated system. Or maybe that's just the brilliance of Ryan Day, is that it's a more simplified system. It's just more effective throwing the football downfield. But Ryan Day's a passing guy. He's a quarterback's guy. And obviously Kirby Smart has strengths in other areas. So if anything, Justin Fields was walking into a situation at Ohio State in which they ask more of their quarterbacks in terms of the sophistication of the passing game.
And, as far as Henry Toto for a moment, and that is, right now it's pretty much a wait and see as far as whether, because what I heard as far as of yesterday or maybe even Monday that he was supposed to be back on campus as far as Knoxville. And that doesn't say as far as they're welcoming him back into the family, or whether he's just trying to not just do everything virtual and, hey, I'm just coming there to pick up my stuff and head on out of town. But the issue right now is, where he's going, whether it's going to be back on the West Coast of USC, whether it's going to be a Buckeye, whether he's going to be as far as a Tider. Now, as far as him being, as far as a part of the University of Alabama, when it was all said and done, that was supposed to be one of his two schools. But then on the other hand, it's a matter of, quote, it being not a NCAA issue, but an SEC issue as far as whether if he transferred to Alabama, which, Alabama, Tennessee, as far as rivals, as well as in the same division, that it would be a no-no for him to transfer there. So it would be a matter of not just as far as the NCAA making the decision, but for Sankey to make a decision. And that's where it's supposed to be, whether they're going to allow them to do the 1-year blanket transfer. So.
Yeah, and I think exactly.
So I know if
Go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, no, I'm listening, Mark. I'm listening.
Well, I was just basically going to say, yeah, to clarify my response to what I was reading that from the Lincoln Riley statement was, I think it's pretty apparent. Well, he made it clear that he's against players being able to transfer within the conference. But you can tell from his response there that, yeah, it's much like an SEC situation where it's just understood we don't do this and we've got an agreement. And so I'm not going to burn you. You're not going to burn me. And we'll encourage these players to leave the conference if they're going to transfer, because we're not going to allow them to immediately play. Where this situation, Gary Patterson obviously wants a quarterback competition and wants him to be eligible. And Lincoln Riley's basically saying, I'm against that, but we'll see how the conversation plays out. And the rules aren't being solidified. The under the radar agreements are being solidified. The rules are set.
Wow. No, indeed. And lastly, Mark, just want to what did the officials say when they come from under the hood upon further review, and that is when it comes to this season, I thought it was going to be pretty much cut and dry, but I see even as far as with this quote off season, for lack of a better way to say it, it is going to be still a battle of attrition there, because I'm not although I reside in the Commonwealth of Georgia, my heart blood crimson, and by that being the case, it still bothered me that Pickens got hurt, and as far as how long he's going to be out, and we know that, hey, as you stated earlier, as far as medical science being greater than what it had ever been, but nonetheless, an 8-10 month process, and I believe that sad to say, this is going to wind up being the Achilles heel as far as for them in the short term. The long term, I believe they can pick up some steam, but when you look at their schedule, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking the Clemson game, the Florida game, and that's it, other than the SEC championship, as far as, quote, battles. And then, the same could be said as far as whoever's coming out of the West. As far as Alabama, I'm looking at, as far as the Miami game, it's going to be, I look at the best way I can characterize the Miami game as far as being, hey, Jalen Hurts versus USC. So that game will decide as far as who will be, quote, that dude for the season. Whether that's going to be Paul Tyson or whether it's going to be, Bryce Young. But then after that, the only way I give, the Florida game some credence is because it's going to be in Gainesville. The A&M game, the only reason why I give that a little bit of credence because, hey, that's going to be in College Station. But still in all, what's going to be the bell cow as far as the University of Alabama this year is going to be the doggone defense. And I'm not talking about defense as I've gone ad nauseum about as far as, hey, we're going to keep everybody the doggone 10 and 13 points. That's not going to happen. But if we can keep them in that 21 to 24 range, I think that the offense can, and say, for instance, if a team has the ball 5 times and we can have at least 1 to 2, 3 and out, I think that can help the University of Alabama weather the storm as far as the early part of the season.
I think you're going to have one of the definitely 4 best defenses in the conference. I think Texas A&M's really loaded on that side of the ball. They lose Buddy Johnson and a couple others, but they bring back something like 20 of their 22 too deep on defense, and they were a top 5 defense last year. I think LSU is going to improve on that side of the ball, and they've got the athletes to do it, and I think they're loaded up front in particular, and they have 2 of the better cornerbacks on the planet playing for them, and Georgia's loaded on defense and stacked. And Alabama. I think those are by far the 4 defenses that are better than everybody else in the conference, unless I'm missing somebody. I don't believe I am. Kentucky's good. I'd put them maybe in the 5th spot, but a definite rung or 2 below the other 4. So I definitely think Alabama's got one of the 4 best defenses in the conference, and probably more like number 2 or 3.
Well, it's going to be an interesting season. I just hope across the board when it comes to, say, your Oklahomas, your Clemson, your Ohio States, et cetera, Alabama, that, hey, I know that, injuries are a part of the game, but, when it's all said and done, would love for it to be, decided as far as on the field. And also, I know you don't particularly care for them, Mark, as far as these guarantee games. But the one thing that if those games are able to take place this year, if any year in which it was needed, Mark, it's needed this year because of the inexperience at quarterback as far as specifically Alabama as well as Ohio State.
True.
Give them those 2 or 3 glorified scrimmages, Mark, and then it would benefit both of those teams in the long run. Because as far as a 8 to 9 or 10 game for that matter SEC schedule, or 8 to 9, 10 game schedule as far as the Big Ten. With inexperienced quarterback play, I wouldn't want to see as far as with the Buckeyes for them to have a revolving door quarterback the same as I wouldn't want that to be the case as far as the University of Alabama. So.
Yeah, neither one of those teams wants to go through what Georgia did last year, because it's going to sabotage a season that should lead to a college football playoff appearance, especially for Alabama. I think they're more... Well, let me put it this way. Alabama's got a better team right now than Ohio State, but Ohio State has less competition in the league. So however you want to shake that out. But of course, Georgia outside the quarterback position was as good as anybody outside of Tuscaloosa, I think, last year by the time they finally pulled it all together. But that really crippled them, of course, in their 2 losses. All right, Kevin, appreciate the call.
Thanks, Mark. Greatly appreciate it as far as your indulgence. And one last thing, one last parting shot, Mark, and it was in reference to your Notre Dame guest. And that is, I almost, if I would have been driving, I would have run into a ditch when he made the statement. I don't know where it came from as far as everyone saying that Notre Dame had such high academic standards. I mean, where did they get that from? I mean, it's not true because they're able to recruit X, Y, and Z. But then just as I heard your guest say that last night, when I looked at Rivals today, I saw the opposite of that comment stating the reason why Notre Dame has issues as far as recruiting is because they're high academic standards. So, but again, as always, Mark, hey, thanks. Hey, take care of yourself. Keep doing what you're doing. And hey, look forward to speaking with you soon.
Appreciate that, Kevin. Have a good night.
All right.
All right. I will get to the Super Chat contribution question right there from Stephen Smith. Stephen, appreciate that so much. Big 12 fan. We will get to that in just a second, but we've got another call on the line. And we appreciate Dominic making another effort to speak with us tonight. So, Dominic, how you doing tonight?
Good, you?
I'm good. What's going on?
Hold on a minute.
Hello?
Sorry about that. That was my Gma. She wanted to ask me what time I wanted to take my nighttime med. I apologize.
Oh, that's quite all right. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. So I just wanted to ask you a question about March Madness. Who do you think is going? Do you think the Creighton Blue Jays have an advantage of beating the Gonzaga Bulldogs in the Sweet 16 in March Madness this year?
Okay, Dominic, you know who you're talking to, right?
Yeah.
How many college basketball videos have you seen me produce?
You just did one about March Madness.
My next one will be my first one. I agreed to take some calls if people wanted to talk a little basketball, but I've not watched, I've watched, a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there. I have no idea who Gonzaga is playing. So I would be the last person that you should probably call to ask a breakdown of the Gonzaga game against whomever they're playing, because
they're playing Creighton, the Blue Jays.
Yes, the Creighton Blue Jays from Nebraska, I believe, is where Creighton is located. So I would guess, since Gonzaga is the number one team in the country, they're the number one overall seed, and Creighton is whatever they are. What are they? Probably a 12 seed. That's a guess.
That's correct.
Oh, look at that! I just threw darts at that one. That Gonzaga is a pretty overwhelming favorite in this game. So I think that's where we stand on that one. All right, Dominic. Anything else?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you. So I heard about that torn ACL from a Georgia Bulldog player. What was his name again? I couldn't remember.
George Pickens.
George Pickens. Yes. How long is he going to be out for spring practice with that torn ACL?
That usually takes about 8 to 10 months.
Oh my goodness. 8 to 10 months?
Yes.
He may miss the whole season, next season of college football.
Well, it sounds like he could be in a situation where he would make a decision, though, even though he could come back to finish up the college football season, that he might as well just rehab to prepare himself for the NFL draft.
That is true. All right, Mark. Well, you have a good night. I know you got some other calls coming in.
Thanks, Dominic. Enjoy the basketball.
All right. Bye, Mark.
All right. Dominic has not failed this week to call me consistently about basketball questions. So I will get to the next call in just a second, but I want to honor this super chat coming in from Stephen Smith. Have you heard anything from any of the Big 12 schools on a spring practice so far? If so, what is the biggest rumors that I've heard concerning the Big 12? So, Stephen, understand that on a regular basis, especially our Ohio State show, we have three writers, one from Rivals, one from 247 Sports, the other one, Tony Gerdeman, from a high-level outfit there. These writers that cover, and I know that I'm stepping outside the conference, but this is for an example, they don't have access to practice. So basically everything that we hear at this point, certainly they've got more and more information as the season unfolds and as the off season unfolds through various means. So it's not that they don't know or aren't privy to more information than most of us, but to show you that they basically have those Zoom conversations with the various players on the field. They talk to the running backs today and talk to Ryan Day once a week. The same deal here, that there is very little that comes out of these spring practices in regards to information. It's less than I've ever seen it in my life. There used to be some type of reports that we would see. So, for example, when I was a sports director at CBS station WCBI in Mississippi, I would get, in addition to actually just going out to the practice field and watching, depending on the leniency of the coach, being able to watch, just get the guys warm up and stretch and do those things. And I talk to the coach and so forth, and then have to leave. Or there'd be other times where they'd let us stick around and watch. And really, I remember at Ole Miss in particular under Tommy Tuberville, we got to shoot the entire practice a number of times. So, and then afterwards, I'd be back at the station and I would get fax. If you remember back in the days of fax machines that they still use on National Signing Day, I would get a rundown of spring practice. Now, of course, it's it's tailored to be positive. It's coming from the school, but at least you got information from the school. Every day I would get information from the University of Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss about their spring practice or their summer practice, the fall practice, the August camps. And it would be detailed to where you could really know what's going on, in addition to talking to the players and coaches once or twice a week. But now, my goodness, there is no information coming out, next to no information. The only thing that comes to mind in the Big 12 that I've heard is, well, first of all, you've got to understand that some of the teams like Iowa State are just getting on the practice field this week. Secondly, that the situation involving Chandler Morris, the transfer quarterback from Oklahoma to TCU, and that situation, which has nothing to do with on the field right now. And then the other one would be that Patrick Fields, the Oklahoma defender, will not participate in spring practice. So besides that, that's the best we can do for you right now. But certainly watch our Iowa State segment that we knocked out with Levi Stevenson. That was a good one. Jason Ray joins us to talk Oklahoma football every Friday. And we talked a lot of Texas in recent weeks. So we've got some smattering of anything that's come out in spring practice there. And we will continue to cover those three teams in particular, because I've got contributors that come on a regular basis from Texas, Oklahoma, and Iowa State, and then some other teams as well. Anybody else in the Big 12? TCU from time to time. All right. So I'm sorry that doesn't completely answer your question, but I think it gives you some insight into the information share today versus 20 years ago. All right. Let's get to the calls. We got, I think we're growing ever popular in the state of Alabama, it appears. Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Who's on the line?
You somehow it called me.
Oh, is this Hunter from Alabama? Look at my phone system.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Hunter,
Yeah,
we of course already had a conversation. I appreciate you taking the phone call. So you have a good night.
You too. Bye.
That's tremendous. So now we've got terminated calls there. Very good. So we were having an issue with the phone lines before. So I gave Hunter a ring at home there. All right, everyone. Appreciate everyone jumping on the line. If anybody else calls, I will certainly take that. Stephen, again, thank you for the super chat. All right. Want to remind everyone that, my goodness, you could help the channel by shopping Amazon using the link in the description section of the videos. Grab that link, put it somewhere where you'll remember it, use it to do your Amazon shopping. It's the same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. Also, again, we appreciate the super chats. You can also contribute to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Go to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App and just search Mark Rogers TV. So you can do that as well. And if you want a mask, a free mask, we've got most of the major teams covered. We've got about 35 teams. So please go to voiceofcollegefootball.com. I should come prepared to put that link in the live chat. I should remember to do that next time. But it's pretty easy to remember. Voiceofcollegefootball.com. Go right there and go to register for free up at the top of the window where it says register for free at the menu bar, and just fill that out. Just your name, email address. We get you the coupon code. You get the free face mask. You get 20% off your first purchase. And you also get entered into a $25 gift card selection. So it's all good stuff. And again, even if you don't want a mask, please check out the site at voiceofcollegefootball.com and register for free. Anything else? We got the Rod Favre mark. If Pickens is out for the year or at least the start of the year, will that make Clemson the preseason number 1 team? Probably talking about my own selections, which I said that my way too early top 25 were the 25 teams that I considered to be the best, 1 through 25. Georgia number 1, Clemson 3. And then, so the Rod Favre, of course, with Georgia losing its best wide receiver, would they drop from that ranking? I don't know, but it's certainly going to be a factor, and it's certainly going to be considered. Definitely going to be considered. All right. We've got a call coming in here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Matt from Nebraska. How are you doing, Mark?
Hey, man, I'm doing just fine. Appreciate you calling. What's going on?
No, not too much. Not too much. I was just we've been having kind of a discussion in the chat here about, and since it's the off season, with the whole, you can talk about, rule changes and what could happen with college football, but what's your thoughts on what would you like to see on rule changes as far as eligibility? Like right now they have, you can play 4 games in your redshirt year and people can transfer, and there's not really a clear cut who can transfer and who can't. I was just wanting to get your perspective on what would, in your mind, what would be the perfect solution?
I don't know if this is a solution, but it seems to be fair to me to allow any given player to transfer one time. And no questions asked, allow them to transfer one time, just like any other collegiate student who decides that they aren't happy with their situation and want to transfer. The other condition I would make is that we have coaches breaking contracts all the time or getting fired in the midst of a contract and leaving. And we know that these players are attached to the coaches. The reason that they signed with that university is there's a laundry list of why they signed, but we know that there was a process of a relationship that was built over time, over a few years, with the head coach and in particular the position coach at that school. And then suddenly, boom, they could be fired and gone. And I haven't really worked through the math of, I don't know how many players would be choosing to leave because of that. But I think that also needs to be considered, that if a player who committed to a certain school and signed based on knowing who the head coach and the position coach is, and then suddenly they're gone, that they should be given the opportunity to leave as well.
I agree with that assessment. I think we're to the point now, and I mentioned it in the chat, that we're up to where if you can play 4 games in your freshman year and not be counted against a red shirt, then you're already up to 4.3 years of eligibility. I could just see, why not just give 5 years of eligibility and leave it at that, and a one-time transfer at no penalty. And then if you transfer again, then you either A, have to sit out a year or lose a year.
Yeah, again, I don't necessarily think that's the complete cure, but that's the first thing that comes to mind and always has concerning transfers.
Right. Well, that was the only thing on my mind tonight. I'll let you get back to it and let another caller get in.
Hey, appreciate that. Have a good night.
Yep, you too, Mark. Bye.
All right. Good to hear from Matt from Nebraska. And also enjoy the comment there coming in from Lewis. Lewis is a guy that follows me on Twitter. And Lewis will just about retweet anything that I post. And why that's important and why that's very meaningful and helpful is that most of you guys have Twitter and Facebook accounts, and 90% of the people that you're in connection with have no idea that we're here talking college football every day. And we are here every day talking college football. And I don't know who does as many live shows as what we do in addition to the content we produce. We've got an excellent conversation that's going to be posted the first thing in the morning on Thursday with Corey from, I don't want to mess up his site, the Hawkeye of the Storm. He just started here on YouTube, but he's had a long-standing news gathering business and also audio podcast. And he was a wealth of knowledge and insight into Iowa football. And so we kicked it around for a good 30 minutes. And so half of that's going to be released in the morning. And then we've got a guy like Lewis who sees that once I post that on Twitter, and he sends it out to the folks that are in contact with him. And that's much appreciated. Again, I state that all the time. Share the videos because my logic is that if you enjoy the conversation, the discussion, the debate, the analysis, everything that we provide here, then other people will as well. All right. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate that. That brings to mind a comment that was on Pigskin Pete's channel the other day that was rather amusing because Pigskin Pete and I get together every Monday at noon, and we were over on his channel, and then I saw one of the comments come in that said something like, we were talking about shortening nicknames or shortening names where certain people can get away with just using their first name. You know, obviously Prince just became Prince. He once had a name, and I'm sure many of you trivia buffs know what Prince's original name was: Madonna, etc., Cher. And then you have people like Elvis Presley who can get away with just going by Elvis, and everybody knows who you're talking about. And then I just said something about, I strive and aspire to one day just be the voice. Of course, I'm kidding. And somebody railed on me, the voice, my ass. So we had a fun back and forth. So, Joel, thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. D-Rock Irish is letting us know that Notre Dame will begin spring practice on Saturday. All practice will be closed to the media and public. Blue Gold game will be announced at a later date. Of course, we've got 2 or 3 Saturdays in April that are really loaded. Maybe I should go back to, in April, that are loaded up with spring games. And on those particular days, either we'll come live to really wrap up the day in spring football if I'm able to watch as many games as I can get to. So I've got some kind of a take. And of course, always want to hear your take. And then maybe we'll do that on the Sunday after the Saturday game. So stay tuned for that. But for those really heavy spring football game Saturdays, we'll go live either that night or on Sunday afternoon to put a spin on all the spring football action. Yes, Joel, college football does need a commissioner. They need a central governing body. Oh, there's Navy Thomas. Navy Thomas loves the whiteboard. The whiteboard, I would get up and go get it right now, but I'm locked in on this earpiece that's got me tied down. I might be able to reach the whiteboard just to show you the whiteboard. It's got nothing on it right now. But I'm going to tell all of you that next week, Monday through Friday, we're going to release a video each day in which I'm going to rank the coaches in each conference. I've got my notes on the Big Ten and the ACC. I'm going to go through the other 3, and we're going to release one Monday through Friday, first thing in the morning, our rankings for each conference, the coaches 1 through 10, 12, or 14, whatever the case might be. All right. Got a call coming in here at the Voice of College Football. Yes. Who's on the line?
Hi. How's it going?
Good. What's going on?
Yeah. So I think there's a pick I was curious to hear your opinion about. So I think Thomas Ross Badman has been getting a lot of traction in the SEC, and I wanted to hear your opinion on if you think that maybe signing down there is a good idea.
Him signing?
Well, right. I mean, isn't the SEC a signing region?
Yeah, I'm not really following your question. I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. I couldn't even hear half that anyway. All right, Navy Thomas, thank you so much. We always appreciate Navy Thomas again, looking for the whiteboard. And yeah, I had a pretty good, what I probably should go with going forward on these is that, yeah, I don't know what it sounds like for all of you when you call in, but you've got to identify yourself, and then the voice recognition doesn't work that well. And then I see what I see, which is typically nothing close to what your name and location is. But for that particular caller, there was nothing there. So I kind of had my thoughts. And then when he was completely inarticulate at the beginning of the call. But hey, when either you're 12 years old or you've got the mental capacity of a 12-year-old, then you call call-in shows and you prank them. So that's what you do. All right. All right. Anything else? Anything else? I don't believe so. We've been on for a long time tonight. Appreciate everybody jumping on board with us. Good show, even when we had nothing as a opening topic. You guys produce the show. You know that. It comes down to you. So thank you so much for joining. And let's see what we got going on tomorrow. Especially Miami fans should be all hyped up for a doubleheader on Thursday at 4:30 and at 7. We've got the Wholesome One, and we've got Cam Underwood from State of the U. So a Miami doubleheader, and college football fans across the board, of course, you're welcome to join in 4:30 and 7 on Thursday right here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Please contribute there and keep that Amazon link to shop Amazon using our link. It's the same shopping experience. voiceofcollegefootball.com. Register for free right there as well. Navy Thomas, Cheryl, thank you for being the best moderator online anywhere. And Cheryl needs some help. So if you would like to be a moderator, please let me know. Hit me up at markrogerstv@gmail.com if you have any requests. And certainly if you've got a sponsorship opportunity for us. We will see you all Thursday, 4:30 Eastern.